Welcome everyone for our Public Art Commission meeting. Let's first do the roll here. Commissioner Gordon.
Present.
Commissioner Shen.
Present.
Commissioner Miyagi.
Present.
Okay, and Commissioner Migdal, we're here for quorum. We are going to make a modification to move item 6 about the downtown parking garage up front after we just do the approval of minutes from last time. You guys want to have a quick look? We went through. Everything looks good to me. All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we are approved. Do you want to do staff comments at least before the speaker cards? What would you like to do first?
Yeah.
Speaker cards. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, Mr. Carnahan.
Thank you, Chair Migdal and Commissioners. David Carnahan in the City Clerk's office. I'm sure you can guess what I'm here for. I'm here to talk about great opportunities to give back to the community and help shape the future of the Palo Alto community. The city is currently recruiting for 2 positions on the Architectural Review Board, 4 positions on the Historic Resources Board, and 2 positions on the Planning and Transportation Commission. The deadline to apply is September 19th at 4:30 p.m. And the homework that each of you has, I'm going to give you a flyer, and you are each to reach out to at least 2 members of the community that you think would be a good fit for one of these boards or commissions, and you think would be, has the availability and time to commit.
Yes.
Applications are available on the City Clerk's website, cityofpaloalto.org/clerk. And any questions, you can reach the clerk's office, 650-329-2571. And members of the public that are here, your homework too is to grab a flyer and either consider applying or find someone else in the community you think would be a good fit. Thank you.
David, can you just recap? Is it 2 planning, 1 historic? Just recap the number.
So we're recruiting for 2 members of the Architectural Review Board, 4 for the Historic Resources Board, and 2 for the Planning and Transportation Commission. And we'll throw in there again, the deadline is September 19th, 4:30 p.m.
Thank you. Mr. Levy. Mr. Levy.
The accessioning of digital DNA at Written Plaza, which is item 3 on the agenda. I'm here representing the Friends of the Palo Alto Parks and the Friends of Lytton Plaza, and they've asked me to communicate to you their priority interest in deaccessioning digital DNA and replacing it with an artwork that would be particularly attractive to the many families with smaller children that visit the plaza. As you know, the plaza is very fully occupied by a very diverse group of shoppers, visitors, and families that live nearby. Additionally, because the plaza is very active during evening hours, it would be exciting to include lighting in all considerations for a replacement piece. And both the Friends of the Lytton Plaza and the Friends of the Palo Alto Public Parks urge you to call on them if there is anything that they can do to be of help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we go ahead and do staff comments.
Sure, of course. So the first item, we just have a couple of items of artworks that were cleaned and restored in the last month since we last saw you. So we'll see, Confluence is taking a minute to come up. Of course, it wants to act up during the meeting. But as you may remember, the Commission voted to allocate funds from our maintenance fund for the cleaning of Confluence. And I'll let Nadia brief you on what was done there because she took the lead on that.
Thank you, Liz. Commissioners, in front of you, seeing the picture of the base and a detailed photo of the sculpture is coming up before treatment. Artist Mike Zaba and his crew were on site 2 full days to evaluate, inspect, and clean and treat the sculpture. So the scope of work included a detailed post-install inspection of the artwork. The team removed all debris, dirt of surfaces. From the surfaces of the base, drain, and the sculpture, worked on the patina, applied a protecting coating for UV protection, and during the second day adjusted the levels of water flow. And I apologize, the computer is totally
We know what it is.
spacing out, but we have some beautiful images for you of the finished work.
And one of the images was featured in this month's e-news, so hopefully you did see that.
A quick question, when's another maintenance schedule for this, in a couple of years? 3 years?
Well, we set an annual maintenance plan with him so that it doesn't get as much growth or watermarks on it in the future. So we're just calendaring an annual maintenance, so it wouldn't cost as much, but it would happen on a more regular basis. The next item that we worked on this month was Excel, which is by Brian Coleman. It's the neon artwork that's on the front of the Art Center. There were a couple of elements of it that were not lighting, and so we were able to get people out to service that. And so now it is looking beautiful once again. So that yellow element to the left was not lighting properly, but we were able to repair it. And that's it for staff comments.
Okay. Thanks, Elise. Thanks, Nadia. All right, so we're going to move item 6, a non-action item, to the staff presentation about the upcoming downtown parking garage and the public art process for the project.
Great. So I have Holly Boyd joining us. She is the point person from for the project from Public Works. So we hopefully can get the PowerPoint to load. So we just, similar to what we did in kicking off the California Avenue parking garage and public safety building last month, we're showing you what potential designs look like now. Now, it's important for you to note that you're going to see 3 different design directions that have not gone to A or B as of yet. So, after that process, there will be much more direction on what it looks like, but we're showing you the 3 concepts thus far. The estimated construction budget will be about $150,000, $160,000 as it's budgeted now. And so I'll let Holly walk you through the downtown parking garage project.
Okay.
The art budget.
Oh, I thought you
Yeah.
said construction.
That's a cheap garage.
Yes, cheapest garage ever.
Public art construction budget.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Thanks for having me. Again, my name's Holly Boyd. I'm a senior engineer in our Public Works Department. So the downtown parking garage, you can go to the next slide, is going to be located at existing parking lot D, which is just over here on Hamilton at the corner of Waverly, directly across from the United States Post Office. So if you want to move forward to the next one. So this is the existing streetscape surrounding Hamilton and Waverly. On the top left is the Wells Fargo. Across the top are different pictures of the post office. And then in the middle is what you see along Hamilton. That tall building is the AT&T building directly next to the parking lot. And then across the street is the All Saints Episcopal Church. And then on the Waverly frontage is the different retailers we have there. That's Taipan and where Cogden and Crane used to be, and Prolific Oven is. So the garage space, council directed to have a start preliminary design on a 5-story above ground garage, and it includes 1 basement below grade level. So this is the first option. I like actually to look at the perspective view, if we can go to the next one. So this kind of shows, I think they call it a solid, it's a metal fabric, or it could be perforated fabric that kind of wraps around the garage. On the on the Waverly side, all options include, or we're having a retail space along there to continue the retail frontage on Waverly. So at the corner there at Hamilton and Waverly, you see the stairwell. I believe you called that the two-story facade there an eyebrow, Elise. Do you want to comment more on that?
Yeah, well, yeah, the strong horizontal line that come over those pillars, sometimes they refer to it, I've been to too many ARB meetings, it's sort of a brow. But there are multiple opportunities in this concept design. If it is that sort of mesh exterior for the integration of public art on those facades, it would, that are pretty easy to imagine. The other opportunity, if you look at the top left rendering, which is the view at center of Hamilton, option 1, you've also got that exterior stairwell, which could lend itself very well for public art. And since there has been so much attention paid to alleyways and activating those pedestrian walkways, especially since code art, you'll notice there is that narrow alleyway also between what is now, is it called Taipan? There's a
Taipan, yes.
Yeah, so there's a restaurant there, and you can see there's a little alleyway between that and the structure.
Yeah.
And if you look just behind it, you'll see another stairwell that comes up. So, so those stairwells and those opportunities will continue through all 3 of the design options you're seeing, but the mesh also, there's lots of different ways that artists could get involved with adding elements to that exterior.
Okay, so I want to move on to the second option. So the second option is kind of takes its design from the AT&T building that's you can see on the left in the bottom rendering. It has a metal material wrap over the entire garage from the 2nd floor to the 5th floor, and they have like window punch outs similar to what you see on the AT&T building. Again, the same areas that Elise mentioned with the stairwells, the backdrops to the stairwells. If you want to go to the perspective via the next one. All 3 options have the pedestrian walkway in between the buildings. It wraps like an L around the garage, and we have a slide at the end that shows that. So it's a 10-foot pedestrian walkway that circles the side of the garage. So that's an opportunity as well. Do you have anything for this option?
Well, I was just going to add that, you know, those window cutouts could offer different opportunities for something with light or glass. So, I mean, it is a blank canvas, but in a very different way than the perforated solution could offer.
What's the cladding in this option?
So they're just talking about some kind of metal material wrap. So it could be a mesh. It could be, they haven't decided yet, yeah.
But something that would let light through, or no, something that would be, so the first one was clearly was a mesh. This one, it looks like it could be a solid surface, but this one, you don't have.
They call it a semi-solid, so I think it would let some light through, and then the windows would let kind of varying degrees of light through as well.
Keep in mind these are very conceptual, so the ARB has yet to weigh in. So likely they will give input and say, we like these elements of this one, we like these elements of this one, the third one we don't like so much. And then from that, the architect will come back with something that's a little more fleshed out.
Right. Okay, so if you want to move to the last one. So the last one option involves kind of solid fins. I think the architect was thinking aluminum, some kind of metal in a terracotta color that kind of reflects the tile roof across the street at the post office. This also has, on the bottom rendering, you see there's a shear wall for the first 2 stories. It shows a little landscaping on front there, but that's just, I think, just to give it some color detail. Elise and I were talking that could be an area that could be used for the art, as well as the stairways and
the stairways. And you also have, if you on that lower rendering between the parking garage and the stairway, you also have that tall elevator shaft. And there are lots of public art projects that have done interesting things with elevator shafts.
Okay, so we're going to move. So this just shows the various angles or perspectives from the other sides. And then I think our last slide shows the alleyway. So basically this is the, there's going to be a 10-foot alleyway. The architects and designer are thinking some kind of living green wall. We have a requirement for C3, so we have to do on-site drainage. There is not a lot of space on this site, so they're thinking some of the drainage will be used either in the permeable pavers for the pedestrian walkway or on this living wall. So that's what they're thinking. But again, there's other surfaces on that area that could be used for art as well.
Is the ingress and egress for vehicles on Hamilton only?
No, so the main entrance will be on Hamilton. There are additional exit towards the back where the alleyway is. I think they call it Lane 21, where the back entrance of CVS is. There, that will still be made as an optional entrance. Yeah. Yeah, it goes to Waverly and Bryant. Well, it's one way, so it really goes to Waverly, or I'm sorry, Bryant. Yeah.
So at this point, it's just a reminder, this one is a non-action item. We're bringing it to the commission just to alert you to the fact that we do intend to kick off the public art process for this. So if any of the commissioners are interested in participating in this public art panel, we would like to have someone on board if you want to email me or Nadia. But we're going to look to initiate that probably in the next month or two.
I had a just simple non-art question. Are you guys planning for solar roof? It doesn't look like there is a solar roof.
So yes, we're actually going to be designing for a solar roof. The city doesn't have funding currently for the solar, but I worked on the project that actually just put the solar on these two garages downtown. I don't know if you've seen them,
Yeah,
and it was
fantastic.
very successful.
Good.
So I'm thinking that, yeah, the city's going to want to move forward with that at some point, either have a similar private developer come in and as part of the utility clean program, but we definitely want to include the infrastructure to support that.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Holly, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for presenting this to us. Just a couple of comments. I liked how the building is trying to blend into the surrounding buildings. It's not just going to be something that's plopped in there. There's some thought has gone into that. And there's some great, I think, opportunities from public art on that. And is that walkway, is that consistent through all three of the options that we saw? Okay,
Yes,
so that
that's
walkway is part of the building. Okay. And I think that's another great opportunity, too. And what is a rough kickoff date, start date on this, and completion date?
So we're just starting the design process. We go to ARB on September 7th, and we kicked off our EIR process earlier this summer. Our design, we estimate to start construction spring 2019, March 2019 is what we're looking at right now. So
Okay,
we
thank
have
you.
quite some time.
Great. Thank you very much. It's great to get an early look for folks that if you haven't done a panel, Senior, they're a lot of fun, and this will be a big one, so that's exciting. Thanks, Elise. All right. So we're going to return to our regularly scheduled programming. So the first item of business is the bike pedestrian bridge, where staff's going to recommend the approval of a piece by or a project by Mary Lucking.
Thank you. So just a quick reminder, and this is an updated rendering since the last time the commission saw some renderings of the bike pedestrian bridge, because it has been through a number of reviews through different bodies. So there's been a little adjustment to the design as it is developed. As a reminder, the pedestrian overpass project at Adobe Creek, it will replace an existing underpass that is available only half the year on average due to seasonal flooding. So what we did was we used our pre-qualified pool of artists. There were 23 that were considered by a selection panel. The selection panel was made up of a representative from the architect, Judith Wasserman, who served on the original bike bridge panel, former ARB and Public Art Commissioner. Mila Zelka served on that panel, Mel Day, who's a Coverly artist, Selene Foster, who's the Art Center curator, Jerry Hearn, who's an environmental advocate here in the community, and Lee Lippert, who's a cyclist and former ARB member. So they chose 5 artists to give more detailed presentations about their previous work and their design development process. And And so on January 25th, the panelists selected Mary Lucking as the finalist. The Public Art Commission approved her in February, and in March her contract was approved by council. She came here in April. And so the meetings with the design team were really interesting because you may recall the budget for this project is very limited for the scale of the project. So after exploring a number of different ideas, Mary Lucking has come back with this concept, which the design team's really excited about. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. So keeping in mind the environment, that this bridge is in, you're over a very busy freeway, you're linking some very different environments, but you're ending in the Baylands. And one of the elements of the project is a small overlook at one section where you get this vista of the Baylands. So rather than sprinkle smaller public art elements throughout the bridge, which as we explored it, we thought no one's going to see it and it's going to look like mismatched design elements, Mary Lucking decided to concentrate the public art efforts into that one overlook section. So if you'll move to the next one. So these are some of the elements that really inspired her, the natural environment below. And then also really off of the grasses, so this idea of the baskets and the flow of grasses, and then also some of these silver works with nature really shown in more industrial materials. And so this is the area we're looking at. You see on that top right, that extension of the bridge is really the one place where someone can step out of the pedestrian and bike traffic. There is a small little curb line that separates the two. So as you come on the top left, that's where you can access it, and there's some bike parking there, and then you can walk through. So there will be traditional benches on part of that, and then the bump out area that really looks over the Baylands is the area we're discussing. So Mary proposes having these cast sculptural elements that could double as creative seating inspired by the grasses, and then hopefully we'll be able to fully fund this creative fence concept. Keep in mind this is very conceptual as far as the fence. So here are some of the sketches that she was working off of. So you can see where she's really married this concept of the grasses and the baskets along with some of those silver works. Go ahead. And so this is a sample of some of the texture. So it wouldn't be slick, it would have a lot of texture to it, it would have a softness to it, and really be pleasing to the touch, something that someone could perch on, lean on, use as seating or not, but really complement the space. And then here were some of the little clay models that she made to sort of play with scale and put them in the space. And then here's the rendering. So the budget would allow definitely for the 3 cast aluminum elements. And then we do have some leftover budget, which we're working with the design team to see if we can leverage some other funding to fund an artist-designed fence, also based on the grasses there. So of course we've already met with buildings about what kind of requirements it needs to meet, that we won't have catch places or anything like that. But the idea that the fence would sort of mimic what's taking place below, and that it really becomes this place of reflection where you can get away and enjoy the view. And so here's just another rendering of what what those panels might look like. And that overlook is not very big. It's 10 by 16. So it looks larger in that space, but it's fairly tight. So those pieces, those cast seating pieces really can't get much larger because it would interfere with circulation and ADA access. So we're really trying to get the fencing funded with the remainder of the public art funds. If that is not an option, then we'll come back to the commission with a revised plan if we have other cast elements that are perhaps at both approaches to the bridge. But we'd really like to enhance this one area and see that to fruition. So that is what we were here asking for, approval for her concept design so that we can move forward into more detail.
Quick question, Elise. What's the flooring made out of? Or is that the wood? Just wood?
It's, I think at this point, that is intended to be a, it's essentially it's plastic decking that looks like wood. It's more durable, yep.
What's the wearability of the material?
What's the wearability
Of the material, because this is going to be in the exposed environment, right?
Yes. So cast aluminum is extremely durable. So it's something that can be power washed when anything else up there is. It's very durable. So it's not something, pardon me? Does not rust.
Quick question about, so the aluminum too doesn't really retain the heat like
Correct.
steel would, for one thing.
Correct.
And then how much more are you talking about for the fencing element?
We haven't priced it out yet. We wanted to come to the commission, make sure that there was support for this, and then we'll price it out if we get into design detail, and then we can go out for bids on that.
Okay, I think, personally, I think that's an important part of that, to really complete that area and really make it look really inviting and nice to be able to sit there and have something around you that's calming, and because you got traffic whizzing by a couple of feet away, got all that noise, that traffic noise, everything, and the pollution as well. So, a nice area to be able to sit and just to look out, I think would be great.
Okay, thank you.
So if we, there's $26,000 that's earmarked for larger castings or additional elements. Can you clarify your thoughts about whether that funding is definitely going to be used, or can that go towards the art rail? I agree with what Ben was saying.
That's the intent, is that the $26,000 would go toward the art rail, but
Okay.
it is not going to be enough to fund the entire thing. We're not sure how short we are, but if the commission is supportive of the concept, I can report back with how short we are if we're unable to find the funding through the rest of the construction.
That would be appreciated.
Okay.
And what's the, if we don't get the art rail, like what do we have? Do we have just you mentioned that the idea of potentially getting some out of the bridge budget, which would be great. If there's no artistic dimension to the railing, what would it look like?
I think if you go back to the overall, I mean, it's the bridge itself has that.
Would it just be a continuation of that other?
Wire type stuff?
Essentially, yes. Oh, I'm on the wrong end. Or is it not going? The first image. But you have that heavy truss, and then in between it, it's that square sort of in and out, and more sort of the same industrial truss look to it.
Okay. And how far, if you're sitting where that figure is sitting, are you from the edge of 101?
The 101 is sort of on where you would park the bikes. So where you pull the bikes off.
See where that is, okay.
Right? So that's the turn where you've cleared the 101 and it's starting
To go back down.
to go back down. So that outlook really does look over.
It's over the bailing. Okay. So, but how as you sit, can you pull up something that shows like the yeah? With
Yeah, we're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go. So the area we're looking at is here.
Okay.
So you really are.
You're well away. You're
I mean, you're
still close to it, but you're not right on top.
Yeah, you're not going to be sheltered from the sound or anything like that, but you're high enough to have this vantage point over the Baylands, and you're not directly over the 101. There's not much we can do about the sound, but
In terms of what you envisioned for the railing, what's the height of the standard railing, and then at what height would those grasses be? I love the grasses. I think it's a great idea.
The grasses would replace the regular railing.
So same height.
They would start at the bottom, and some of the top grass elements may come up a little bit higher, but we want to.
There was a measurement there, 52, 54.
Okay, sorry.
Is it up to here?
But it can be lower than that at that stage. So once you're not over the 101 anymore, it can be lower than that.
Okay, so then your regular fencing might be lower, which then people might, well, I don't know if force me
Yeah, but this won't be that high. So she had created these renderings before we met back with transportation and the buildings department.
And would Mary be the person to do the additional art rail, or that would go out to bid to someone else, or can we have her do the whole?
We would have to work that. That's part of the negotiation of are other pieces being fabricated somewhere that we could send the design, and it's less expensive to have it created there, or is it something that Mary would have fabricated perhaps in Arizona and then send it here and have it installed? So those are all things we would have to work out to see if we can make the budget work.
Got it.
That would be a destination, which is what she's looking for, and instead of trying to do something over the whole bridge, which is impossible with that budget. So I really like what she's going for there.
Okay, great.
Any other comments or questions before we vote?
One other quick question. For more funding, is it possible to use pool money?
It would be possible if the commission wanted to allocate additional funds to bridge that gap. So those pooled funds can be used that way. So perhaps what I would recommend is when we have our retreat and we are able to really deep dive into the budget, and I have a clear understanding if there is a shortfall, that I can come back to the commission and request an additional allocation of funds for this project.
Great.
It would be my preference, if we can, to lean on the bridge budget. I'm sure you're
The bridge budget is also extremely tight, so, but we're looking for any efficiencies we can find to get us there.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve?
I approve the allocation, or not the allocation, but I approve the design, right?
We're approving an allocation of
Oh,
funding.
in allocation, excuse me, see, I was on the right track.
So do we have a
You're-
motion?
And funding.
Approving the design.
Yes, of
Okay.
the design, sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Our next item is the benches by Colin Seelig.
Yes, so here we have the visuals.
Actually, before you go on, could you just do a refresh for Zinnia where these came from, like how they're like the propane tanks? This is a very cool project, so you have the context.
So the temporary exhibition of the Colin Selig artwork came about after several discussions between the city's Public Works Department, Public Art, and Palo Alto Downtown regarding the desire to bring more creative seating elements to downtown. And this came at a time when the standard benches that were in place had outlived their useful lives. They were starting to break. They all needed to be replaced. And there were definitely a lot of community advocates who wanted something more creative. So we were able to negotiate a loan of these artworks from Colin Selig. And these artworks are all upcycled propane tanks. So he takes those huge propane tanks and cuts them. He doesn't reshape them. But he cuts them and he puts them together in these shapes, and then has them powder coated. He has worked for years on the ergonomics, so they are actually very supportive in the way that they position you when you sit in them. And the loan was to be for 1 year, which was May of this year, with the option to extend for 6 months. So we're currently in that extension period. The commission had allocated $6,665 for the delivery, installation, loan, and removal of the artworks. There was an option to purchase them at the end of this loan period, and the artist agreed to give the city a very generous discount. They're about half of what he normally sells them for, and he would credit the removal cost toward the cost, since he wouldn't need to come remove them. So as for public feedback, we've received overwhelmingly positive feedback for the benches. People really seem to love them, especially the top two, which are right outside Keene Garage. They've just said they just absolutely love it, that kids want to climb on them, and that, you know, it's been really fun. There have been a couple of people who have voiced some objection to them because they are not sleepable. And so they feel like that's a downside in the design. There was a group of Leadership Palo Alto Fellows who also launched a GoFundMe campaign to try and raise funds to keep the benches. They had limited success. They raised about $1,200. Commissioner Ross was part of that effort as well. And so there is an upcoming utilities project in downtown. It's a gas main replacement that's going to cause an extended impact to the ease and convenience of pedestrian circulation in the downtown area. These impacts will extend through calendar year 2018 and 2019. Given this, the city is asking the council to approve a one-time contribution from the replacement projects for the Art in Public Places Fund, with the intention that the funds will be used for the purchase of the public art benches. So, because the benches will provide a tangible and substantive enhancement to pedestrians' experiences. The art benches would otherwise be removed in accordance to the existing agreement and returned to the artist. So staff is recommending that the commission allocate funds in the amount of $17,100 for the purchase of the Collins Helix sculptures and accept the 5 creative seating elements into the city collection. If the commission does approve this, then utilities will then go to council to ask for the allocation to utilize those funds that would then reimburse us for that expenditure. Just to clarify, because I know that was a little confusing.
And it's the entire amount that they would be reimbursing us for, or just partial?
No, the full $17,100.
Okay, thank you.
Unless we can utilize that $1,200, so it would be less the $1,200 from the GoFundMe. But either way, the public art fund would be reimbursed. That's it.
And then, can I ask you, the maintenance, which is every 10 years, will be done by us because they will be public art?
Yes,
Correct?
that's part of the consideration in taking something in the collection is the
Okay.
maintenance. So I did add in the staff report that we would have to budget about every 10
25,
years to
30.
have them recoded, and it averages to about $500 a piece.
But every 10 years, that's pretty reasonable for, right? Thank you.
Is the likelihood that we would get reimbursed pretty high?
I can't speak to what council may decide to do.
Well, I think this is a no-brainer. I enthusiastically recommend that the commission approve the amount of $17,100 for the purchase of these benches.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
You're lovely.
Okay.
Have you tried them out?
I haven't, but I will.
Yes, she's
They're
going
more
to. Is there
comfortable.
one the color of your shirt?
Yeah, I know,
There might be,
exactly.
yeah.
There might be a one color my shirt.
Okay, our next item, number 3, is about digital DNA.
Okay, so as the commission may very well remember, as part of our public art master plan, we had an evaluation of all of our policies and procedures, one of which was the de-accession policy. And so the commission did approve that policy, and now we're ready to put it into effect with a few artworks that were identified by ARG consultants as high priority projects that need to be addressed either for repair or for de-accession. Digital DNA is one of those. So staff is recommending that the Public Art Commission initiate de-accession process for Adriana Varela and Nilton Maltz's digital DNA located at Lytton Plaza, based on the process and conditions outlined in the city's de-accession of artwork policy adopted in December of 2016. Digital DNA was commissioned in 2000 for $9,950, but the specific site for the installation was not yet determined. The commissioned amount did not include installation or footings for the sculpture. Staff and the Public Art Commission explored sites on California Avenue, King Plaza, and Lytton Plaza. Ultimately, Lytton Plaza was selected as the venue for the sculpture. The purchase agreement did not address deaccession or Visual Artists' Rights Act, which was very common at the time. In 2001, Varilla's stored pieces for the sculpture were inadvertently mistaken for junk by a neighbor and thrown away. Once Varella finished creating the artwork, there were delays in scheduling the installation due to ongoing discussions regarding the potential redesign of Lytton Plaza. During those delays, there was a warehouse fire in the San Bruno facility that digital DNA was stored in, and the sculpture was completely destroyed. At that time, the artists were local to Palo Alto. They have since relocated to New York. I think they're both in New York now. On August 19th of 2004, the Commission voted to fund a second version of the artwork with the insurance funds from the fire. Varela completed another version of the sculpture, and it was installed at Lytton Plaza in June of 2005. 2 weeks prior to the unveiling, digital DNA was vandalized. Several circuit boards were removed, and the artist was able to repair the damage. Lytton Plaza redesign and construction began in 2008, and digital DNA was taken off site and restored by the artist, and then reinstalled at the plaza in time for the ribbon-cutting ceremony in December 2009. In 2011, the project had once again was looking like it really needed some work. Adriana Varela and Alex Lage submitted a proposal to completely restore the sculpture for an amount of $82,400 and believed that they may have found a Brazilian corporate sponsor to fund the restoration. At that time, there were some serious concerns from the Public Art Commission allocating an amount so far beyond the original commissioned amount to remake the sculpture. There was another proposal from the artist to gold leaf the sculpture because the gold leaf might help seal the boards. The commission was not in favor of that option either. So there was a group of commissioners and staff who set about looking throughout the city for a more protected space for digital DNA to be exhibited. So if the commission was going to undertake rehabilitating the sculpture, we wanted to ensure that we weren't doing this every 3 to 5 years. No location was discovered because it really is a sculpture. You need adequate space to walk around, and we explored libraries. There's not really an indoor space suitable for it. We approached the Historic Museum. We couldn't find another space for it. So we've done several replacement of boards. We've had it recoded a number of times, and in the report you'll see a summary of all the work that's been done on digital DNA over the years. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 that's gone into digital DNA. So of the considerations for deaccession outlined in the policy, staff recommends deaccession for the following considerations. The condition of the artwork cannot be reasonably guaranteed. The artwork requires excessive maintenance and has faults in the materials, and repair is impractical or unfeasible. The artwork has deteriorated, and repair or remedy is impractical, I can't say it, or unfeasible, and no suitable site is available for the relocation or exhibition. So the ARG conservation report is there for you to see. I've also inserted the language from our master planners, really citing the fact that the circuit boards are a material that are not intended to be exhibited out of doors. And if you've seen the rotating images, you can see some of the coatings. We've had it recoded multiple times. The boards get broken off. We've replaced them quite a bit. Screws get loose in there, so we've puttied and put screws back in. So we feel like we've prolonged its life as long as we can. And so if the Public Art Commission votes to proceed with this deaccession process, the artist will be immediately notified via email and writing of the process. We will open the public comment period, and the final vote will take place at the November meeting to make the deaccession final. And staff has had discussions with Friends of Lytton Plaza to utilize that space potentially for ongoing rotating temporary exhibitions. Staff would like to remind the commission and anyone else listening in that public opinion and aesthetic taste are not reasons for deaccession. But those that apply have been outlined in the policy, and I stated those earlier. The artist was one time a resident of Palo Alto, and staff recommends that the commission really focus on the reasons for deaccession that are outlined in the policy.
Thank you very much. It's the first time that we've had the policy come into effect, and we really appreciate all the work that you and the legal team have put into place to kind of clarify, when you get to an unfortunate place and, we're dealing with art that isn't suited for the location. So thank you for providing the summary. I actually had no idea of some of the events that happened in the life of the piece. Is part of the process for finding a new home for digital DNA, is there if you just refresh my memory about the possibilities, if we've exhausted the options for public spaces, is there part of the policy to find a private home? Are there other corporate folks that may be in the neighborhood that may want to take it on who have a history in the valley? If you just kind of clarify that for the commission, that'd be great.
So, and some of that is outlined in the policy. So if the commission does determine in November to officially deaccession the artwork, there is a period of time at which the artist always gets the first right to take the artwork back at their own expense. But if the artists want to come collect the artwork, they get the first right to take it back. We're not estimating that there's a monetary value here, so that wouldn't play into it. If they determine that they do not want it back, we can offer it for public sale and the artist receives a certain portion of the proceeds. So that goes to your case. If somebody wanted to come forward and purchase the piece or relocate the piece, they would have the opportunity to do that after public noticing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So the artist gets the first, obviously, it's their piece. They would have the opportunity to take it back. If they choose not to, then it's at our discretion to help try to find a home for it, in which case they take a portion of the proceeds from that.
And it needs to be offered for a public sale. So it would have to be a very open and transparent. Usually you advertise in the paper that this is what's happening.
And is staff, are we responsible for administering that public sale, or who's responsible for doing the sale?
Staff and legal would do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I was wondering if safety is part of the concern because of the exposed surface and the fact that it's in that environment where children can touch it and stuff like that.
We've definitely had broken boards that have some jagged edges, and you can see there are some of those, those wires and the soldering pieces that have come off. Fortunately, there haven't been any reports of injury, but it's something we're very mindful of whenever we go by it and we look at it. We're looking for those places where there might be a problem.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about is sometimes, there are rare minerals that are being used in the fabrication of these boards that really are not meant to be having direct contact with the skin.
That's an excellent point. Thank you.
As I was walking to the meeting tonight, I passed Lytton Plaza, and they had the music going on down there, and I stopped for a couple of minutes listening to music, but the digital DNA just kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. I just thought it just out of place of where it was, the age of it, the way it looked. It just looked bad. And I agree with this gentleman that spoke earlier that to remove it, and there's a great opportunity there, either for temporary art or maybe even some other iconic piece of art to go in there to really liven up that plaza, and I think that would be great. So I think we need to go ahead with this deaccession of this piece.
Any other comments? So remember, our vote here is really based on the things that Elise outlined in terms of the condition of the art and, that it requires excessive maintenance, et cetera, it's deteriorated. So I move that we deaccession.
Second.
I'm in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So it will be tentatively agendized for the November meeting, and this will officially open the public comment period. We will be passing those comments along to the commissioners, and we will compile them for that November meeting. That's it.
Is that an official duration of time that we take public comment on this? Is it
The artist needs a certain amount of notification time so that if they do want to respond, offer another solution, or make arrangements to come collect the artwork, that they have adequate time to do so.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, our next item, item number 4, is another deaccession consideration for Go Mama on Cal Ave.
I feel like the Grim Reaper. Okay, so the next item is Go Mama, perhaps one of our most talked about artworks in the collection. Staff recommends that the Public Art Commission initiate the deaccession process for Go Mama by Marta Toma, located on California Avenue and Ash, based on the process and conditions outlined in the deaccession of artwork policy. In 1999, Marta Toma was commissioned by the city to prepare, construct, and install a sculpture titled Go Mama for $15,000. The commission funding included generous donations from local merchants. So California Avenue merchants, some of the contributors were Leaf and Petal, Country Sun, Language Pacifica, All House King Realty, Hotel California, All House Denton, and Keeble and Shuckett. So they all contributed funding for approximately half of the purchase price of the sculpture. The California Avenue Business Group, known as CADA, at the time participated in the artwork selection process and supported the transformation of California Avenue into the Avenue of the Arts. The artwork on Cal Ave and Ash was sited on a former planter, so you can see the ring there, that the public art program filled with concrete to make the foundation for the artwork. At the time that the artwork was originally installed, there were low bushes all around that base, so people couldn't approach it as readily. When the new California Streetscape project was completed in 2015, the pedestrian sidewalk was widened, as you see here, and so it's very accessible. And in fact, if you see some of the staining in the foreground, during the farmers market, people are frequently sitting there, children are standing up there and pushing on the sculpture. As far as maintenance records, as you can see in the deaccession report, there hasn't been a lot of funding that's gone toward maintenance. We've had her waxed fairly regularly. We did employ the artist to come out and repaint the face several years ago. We've had a number, as you can see here, there's an imprint of a small bronze element that has come out of the base. The artist, Marta Toma, also at the time lived here. She was a Cubberley artist. She was a public art commissioner at one time. She has another piece in the permanent collection, and she had 2 other temporary projects in the city. She still lives in the Bay Area. And while the piece is frequently brought up for comment regarding people's personal taste, staff encourages the Public Art Commission to focus on the considerations, once again, outlined in the policy. So, and here you can see some of more of the staining. So ARG evaluated the artwork in 2015 and identified it as one of the high priority pieces for us to address. Their report calls out a lot of staining and discoloration with a treatment estimate of $3,250 to stabilize the surface of the sculpture, but that will not address the overall stability of the artwork, the structural issues. During the farmers market in particular, there are groups of people seated at the base, frequently with children standing there interacting with the sculpture. The artwork is not stable enough in the current location to withstand so much physical contact. In conversations with ARG, they asked if fencing the sculpture might be the right option to keep the public away from it. Our public art consultants also in their evaluation really felt that because the sculpture is top heavy and it has one point of contact, just inherently, even if we were to completely remove the piece, rework the base of it, inherently the shape of it makes it unstable. So of the considerations for deaccession outlined in the policy, staff recommends deaccession for the following considerations. The condition of the artwork cannot be reasonably guaranteed. The artwork's structural condition may pose a threat to public safety. The artwork has faults in the design and repair may be impractical or unfeasible. Significant changes to the design of the site have occurred, which affect the integrity of the artwork. and no suitable site is available for the relocation or exhibition of the piece. So staff recommends that the commission proceed with the de-accession process, open the public comment period, notify the artist officially of the de-accession, and agendize the final vote for November. And so here you can see, there is some concrete fill around the base of that foot to try and stabilize it. And we've gone in several times with our crew to try and do it a little bit more, but it doesn't make much of a difference. And you can see some of the staining.
Try to turn on the video.
Okay. So,
Just a second.
let's see. We'll see if we can get it to go.
5 seconds.
So I went out there briefly and just gave it a light touch and a video of it just so you can see it wobbling. But I did not, I don't want to push it aggressively, but there are young children who get up there and push on it. So we do get calls about once a year from somebody who's worried about it and reports it in, and we go out and look at it. So it hasn't changed, but it is disconcerting.
In the meantime, do we have any sort of do not push or?
We've found that kind of signage sometimes invites more of it.
Oh, yes, right here.
If you say do not climb, it's, it's as though you put an invite on it.
Here we go.
And it's just really brief and fairly subtle, but it just gives you a sense with a little push. Oh, it's going to be too jumpy to really.
Didn't work out, I'm sorry.
It's too jumpy, but
Just goes.
feel free to go test it yourself. But but it does wobble, and so inherently it is unstable. Additionally, you should know that when we've tried to address the stability before and really asked for and looked for details on exactly how it is mounted, those records aren't there. So while it does appear that there is a rod going down the foot into the foundation, if we decided to remove it, it's going to be considerably expensive to remount it, and I'm not clear that that's going to solve it.
How involved has Marta been in the process? Is she still around? Is she still?
We've had difficulty getting hold of her. She's known the wobbling has been an issue for years, including when she came and worked on it several years ago and repainted the face for us. She's, I don't think we've really had much contact since the streetscape changed.
So she's not responsive when we're saying, look, we're having issues. Can you come out and have a look at what you can do?
Well, the wobbling issue, she just, there's not much that can be done short of completely deinstalling the piece, which you would have to then remake part of the base or remake part of the footing of the sculpture.
So ARG's report has said it's, we've changed the context that the piece is in, and so now it's much more accessible. Mm-hmm. And it's not stable. It's a risk potentially of falling on a child, and the artist hasn't responded to our queries to say, hey, we're not in a good place.
Well, that's been an ongoing issue. It's not. She has just said, well, it's stable. She hasn't really been alarmed to it. But we've been trying to contact her over the past week to make sure that she's aware that this process is taking place, especially because it may be reported in the press. And we haven't been able to get hold of her yet.
Okay. Thank you. So
I have a quick question, actually.
Yeah.
So, I know that there's a lot of concern about the safety of it, but, I mean, obviously kids, for example, like to touch it and find it intriguing. I mean, what's the overall, are people interested though? Like if we were to move it somewhere else, or if we were to maybe find somebody who would take it in within the city, people are interested in it? It's just not the safety part? Have you found that, or is it hard, or can you not speak on that, or?
We haven't had anyone jump in wanting to take it on, but perhaps during the public comment period, someone like that might emerge.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason for having a comment period.
And then we've looked at moving it if we were to move it somewhere, where like it was not in a way placed that people could actually touch it or that it would potentially fall and hurt somebody. Have we looked into that or no? I don't remember.
Staff has concerns that there are inherent challenges in the shape and structure of the piece that as it stands now,
Yeah.
any sculpture that is put in public space has to withstand all of the building regulations and structural regulations. And my concern is that this would not meet
Okay,
those
thank you.
requirements.
Okay. And these, I'm assuming these requirements were not around when this sculpture.
They were not.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but, okay.
Well, my biggest concern would be the safety part of it, because it is inviting for young children to be able to hang off the leg or one of the arms, and like I said, I think we have our own little bobblehead there, so I really think that this needs to be deaccessioned.
So just remember, so tonight, this is similarly with digital DNA, we're not voting tonight to deaccession it, we're just opening the period of public comment. And so I think that, we may have creative ideas that come for both pieces in the course of the next 90 days. I personally think this is a fun piece, and if we can find another home for it, maybe redo it in some way, and someone else steps up, that would be a good outcome, and hopefully this discussion tonight will spark that in the next few months.
Sure.
Yeah, it may, I would think that something like this at the Children's Museum, like inside a museum, generally people kind of walk around it instead of hanging off of it. And, that may work.
Another question about, with these two pieces now going forward for the public comment, what kind of workload do you think is going to put on staff with the public? I imagine it'll be the amount of public comment that you get, but it's just going to be another thing to be added onto your plate, so.
Well, it is, but we knew that this was going to be coming up, that we have, we have a third item in the collection that'll be coming next month to kick off the deaccession process if the commission chooses to proceed down that route. So we know that it takes a certain amount of work. Lots of public comment will be most of it, but also a decent amount of research as questions and queries come in from people. We may have to research some various options.
Now, is public comment through email, phone calls? Will there be a meeting for public comment, anything like that?
Really what we're asking is for people to send emails to pac@cityofpaloalto.org. So they'll all be compiled digitally, forwarded to the commissioners, but then we'll also make sure they're all compiled at the time that you make the decision for the final deaccession.
And we may actually have speakers at our meetings to
I would expect we would.
pro and con for these items.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Anything else? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the movement to public comment?
I motion to approve the movement to public comment.
Okay. I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, now we get to talk about some new art for King Plaza.
Now this is the fun part. We have new eye candy. And the beauty of temporary public art is you don't have the maintenance obligation. And it is time limited. So over the past 4 years, the Public Art Program has sponsored ongoing rotating temporary installations on King Plaza, such as Murmur Wall, which is out there currently. The intent is to offer a variety of kinds of installations in different styles that explore the use of the plaza and activate the space. Staff evaluated the artists in the pre-qualified pool, which we're going to have to we're due to relaunch that call for a new pool. Both with existing artwork available for exhibition and artists who create site-specific temporary artworks. The list of those artists and artworks that can be shown on the plaza with its various restrictions was fairly limited. Staff vetted a number of these artists and artworks and proposes the following 3 artists for installation on King Plaza over the next 2 years. So the first one is Toby Fraley. He's a Pennsylvania artist in the pre-qualified pool who does retro-style robot installations. This is one he actually won best, another after award, one of the best of, I think it was 2016 as well. This is in the Pittsburgh Airport, one year in review. He's proposed to create ArtForge 2.0. So the first version was done for Scottsdale, Arizona, and Fraley plans to create a more durable outdoor version for Palo Alto that will juxtapose well with the City Hall building behind it. The interactive public artwork would also coincide with the Palo Alto Art Center's upcoming exhibition Play, which opens this fall. The Art Center has offered to co-sponsor and cross-promote the commission of Toby Fraley's ArtForge. The ArtForge creates an artwork. So here you have this machine, and you put in 4 quarters, and the machine creates an artwork, an original artwork that comes out the end. And so they get an original artwork that on the back has our logos on it. And the budget for the project is $20,000 for approximately 6 months. The Art Center would contribute $5,000 to make the public art portion $15,000. If approved, the artist will immediately begin creating the artwork and plans to bring it to California in October for installation. The piece would remain on the plaza through spring 2018. So if you scroll back through, you can get a better sense of his aesthetic, sort of this retro.
Excuse me, the money goes back to him, right?
The money, so the artworks cost about $1 each to create, so it pays for the reloads of the artworks. It's all very, yes, it's
Okay.
self-sustaining in that way.
Right. That might be interesting for if we do end up having this piece to actually just say that. I don't know if it says that, but I think it's in the
I think it's
beginning.
important as well, yes. And then we could show just an excerpt of the original ArtForge so that they get a sense of how it moves.
Yes.
So install would be when?
This fall to coincide with the Art Center's Play exhibition.
Got it, thank you.
And then it would remain through the spring. And then I'll show you what we've got next. So here, I don't know that we necessarily need to play the whole thing, but you'll get a sense of, I can get it to go. So you put in your quarters, and the boards will be preloaded in our case. So then you have the cutting room. So now you see why the Art Center thought it coincided with their Play exhibition pretty well. It's a pretty playful piece.
How long does it take from beginning to end?
Well, the one he's doing for us will be shorter. So it's an abbreviated version. We want to make sure it's got fewer moving pieces so that there's less option for it to break. And then you've got the painting room. So it would be an abbreviated version of this, but same concept. Yes, they're all different.
Can you fill us in a bit more about Toby's background?
Yeah, so Toby has had a really good exhibition history, but mostly on the East Coast. So Arizona's as far as he's come, so this would be his first time showing in California, which we're really excited about. I think we do have his bio up there, but he's had some pretty impressive exhibitions. Last year, so the Robot Repair in Pennsylvania, the ArtForge in Scottsdale, He did a big interactive piece in Indianapolis, the Lost Sound Search Engine 3. So, I mean, he's been doing public art steadily since 2009, and then previous to that, he had a lot more indoor exhibitions. So he's, you know, within 10 years of making that leap into public art. So he's relatively new on the scene. We would be the first to show him in California. But he just seemed like an artist in our pre-qualified pool who could be really fun and an interesting juxtaposition of this tech community and something that's so kind of retro. And so, yeah, so the other rendering, see there's the artwork on there. And so that's the proposal for Toby Fraley to build the Art Forge on King Plaza. And then the next artist we're looking at, so this would be next spring, probably in April, is Konstantin Dimopoulos, and some of you may have seen his exhibitions. He's done these all over the world. The Blue Trees Project, really intended to bring attention to deforestation. So what we've discussed is him doing this to one of the large stands of magnolias out here, which will be pretty time and labor intensive. He has, a lot of these projects also are a great opportunity to engage the community. So I know Canopy has been interested in this artist and potentially bringing him here before. You know, we could get school groups involved. But as you can see, that pigment is really striking. And there's some information here too. It is not a paint, it is a pigment that is safe for the trees, that is safe for the environment, and will wash away with rain. Because of the canopy here, I anticipate that at some point when it fades to a certain point, we'll simply wash it off of the trees. But that it would be really striking here, and certainly a very different kind of installation than anything we've ever done here on King Plaza. So here you can just see sort of ongoing different types of installations he's done. He's a very dynamic public speaker also, and here you see some of the community groups and school groups that get involved. But it's a project that offers a lot of opportunity for partnership and is certainly very visually striking. So, so that is the next one we propose, and I would estimate we'd want to keep it for 9 months to 1 year. We need to monitor how they look. If they start fading too much after 9 months, we may want to go ahead and wash the rest of the pigment off and move on, because we don't want it to deteriorate too much. But those trees have a pretty smooth bark, so I think they're going to wash pretty nicely and wear pretty well. Are there any questions on Konstantin?
Can he do it in cardinal red?
He doesn't work in red. It's only this blue. He has other bodies of work in bright red, but not the trees. No.
How many trees in the stand are you considering?
Well, he would do each of these has 8.
Okay.
So he would do one of these stands. Yeah, I mean, it's because those trees are pretty big. We're going to have a cherry picker and an operator on site, and it'll probably be a day a tree, and we can have volunteers doing a lot of the lower sections. So, as I said, there's lots of great opportunity for programming over the course of that week, bringing in school groups, bringing in Canopy, bringing in different groups for that programming. So that would be for next spring, and those would stay through the summer and going into the next winter.
So in terms of rain, does that, would that, because I mean, springtime, you never know. So would that affect that?
I mean,
Is that
it's
something we've thought about, or?
well, it's always something we think about. So the trees out there don't tend to lose their leaves, so there is some protection there from the canopy. Additionally, it's not as though it's going to wash off immediately, so it can weather quite a bit of rain, but you know, at the end, yes, we will want to wash it to get the rest of it off, but it's not like we're going to have one rainstorm and all the blue's going to be gone. So, and as you can see from some of the images, a lot of these projects have been in very exposed areas. So we would bring, I would come back with a specific budget and proposal for Constantine at a future date. I just want to go through the artists and get the commission's approval for the artists. And then we'll go to the third one, which is Megan Geckler. And Megan Geckler is a Los Angeles artist who has primarily done projects indoors, but is also segueing into outdoor public art at this point. And so this is an outdoor project that she has done in DC outside the HRC headquarters. It's a memorial for the Pulse nightclub victims. And so this is a temporary artwork as well, and it's done with a vinyl like you would do for outdoor banners. So we'll show some of her other work. Traditionally, she's done these installations with flagging tape. And a lot of them have gone multi-stories down through the centers of buildings, really huge. We have some more we can show. So like here's one in Australia, draped from a skylight through the various levels of this mall and building. So really playing with color, changing an environment, really interacting with the existing architecture. And so we really gravitated toward her work, and we wanted to explore, well, if we had some sort of forum for her to work with out on the plaza, or was there something else she wanted to engage with? And what we're really thinking is that she work on the facade of the building. So we've been on the roof, looked at the rigging that's there, and we want to explore potentially doing something that would go from the roof of City Hall and either band across the building or terminate in the fountain. So we're just now exploring materials and feasibility for doing something like that. But that's the idea. We're just at the start stage. So clearly we would have to, once we get all that together, I would have to come back to the commission at that time for an allocation of funds and a more concrete plan for what the actual artwork would be.
And I just want to add that her website is absolutely stunning. So I
Can we pull it up?
Yes, I invite you to really take a look at the scope of her projects. Let's see what we have here.
Yeah, so
These are the SF MoMA, that might not have been her, but like there's that round piece that might have been, that's string, I think.
Just read about her though, so she's somewhere that is on our mind,
It looks
right?
similar. I've seen it.
Ryan at Halpern sent me a link to something, and she said, wait, is this the same artist you're proposing to the commission? I said, yes, and I don't recall what it was.
She's out there somewhere right now that.
But she's another one that's really making this transition and just really getting some good exposure right now.
So perhaps more shots of the one of the projects that we showed earlier.
The Pulse piece.
Very fun projects, and I love that we're getting the Art Center involved and springboarding off their exhibition. And then the number 2 that you're bringing the color in with the Blue Tree Project, how we can get community engaged in that. Many of us were involved in the Willows. And it's just a lot of fun. And just having the artist here. I mean, these are great projects, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you. So, yeah, here's some other images of that, of more of her pieces. But for this evening, what we're requesting is an allocation of funds for $15,000 to support Toby Fraley and the approval of the next 2 artists we plan to engage for King Plaza, and we'll come back to the commission once we have a specific proposal and a budget amount we want to request.
I have a question for you about
Sure.
the Constantine Demopoulos. And just going to throw it out there as an idea for broadening the scope to do more trees around different parts of the city. It doesn't seem that it would be, maybe I'm underestimating, but if you pick the right types of trees, it could be kind of an interesting project. I just I don't know what the expense might be, but it's the extent that if some people could be educated about the process, just something to consider.
So there are 2 ways he generally does these projects. So there is one, which is what we were looking for, to do artwork on King Plaza, which is to integrate with existing trees. The other thing he has done is when there's a lot of saplings that haven't been planted, they're gathered in one place, the community paints them, and then they get farmed out and planted different places. Right, so we would have to coordinate with what tree plantings are taking place throughout the city. Yeah, it doesn't do anything for us for King Plaza. I don't know if there's a way, are you suggesting that perhaps we have a bit of a hybrid?
I'm not, I don't know. I think
Okay.
that I like the idea, and I think that we've talked about wayfinding, we've talked about days to do things that are unexpected, and, I mean, I don't want to sound like a hack. My mom is here as an artist, she may like Shutter, but I think that it doesn't seem overwhelmingly complicated to paint a tree. I don't want to diminish what's in the process, but to the extent that the materials are not overwhelmingly expensive, there may be some neighborhoods that say, hey, I want to do that. And it could be blue, it could be red, the idea that it's pigments that don't hurt the trees and yet make you aware of the beauty of the tree and the idea that, hey, there is deforestation. It kind of raises an issue in a way that we haven't done anything like that. And I just, so maybe we talk about it at the retreat in September.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Generally, he looks to have them as a grouping because they're more impactful. So that's the way he's always done it. So if you look at some of the images from Sacramento, from all these various projects, the grouping is what gives you that wow, that moment. And so that is something that is important to him, that I think is important to respect.
Just responding to what Jim's saying, you know how during Christmas time there are these blocks that just
Christmas tree
adopt
light,
the Christmas lights, and I just wonder if some blocks may say, hey, we want it in the on the trees that belong to the city.
We'll tell you what, I want to respect the integrity of the way he does his projects. I think at a neighborhood level, people could choose to do it if they wanted it. So maybe it's something we do,
Yeah, and I would be cautious about the artist copyright of the project too. So,
Fair enough.
I have one more I have a comment on Toby Fraley, and I agree with Lauren. I think it's great that you get the art centers being involved, but I like the interactive part of it. I like the kind of the retro feel of it. And I can't wait for that to go in. I think it's just going to be I got to get my quarters all together now so I can feed them into the machine. But I think it's just a great thing for people to sit for a couple of minutes and watch that process and get a little piece of art in the end. And for the kids, everybody, I think the interactive part of that is what's really the fun part of it.
So I had a question actually about that piece. So first of all, I'm trying to understand the sizing, first of all, if it's like a, I feel like it's more of a King Plaza, it's a destination piece, but at the same time, is it like going to be fairly visible, or are people is it gonna be right up front, is that, okay, and then my other question, I guess, is it gonna be just anybody can use it all night? Are there people, what's the maintenance to it? It just seems like a piece. I think there's a part of me that's looking at it could be interesting. Oh, if it breaks down, it's art. It's something I think people need to always think about. But at the same time, I'm just trying to think about the maintenance aspect because it feels like it is a very fragile piece that might need maintenance and things like that.
Of course. So that is something we're always mindful of. So this is the approximate scale of the project. We are imagining putting it sort of where Truth Booth was, so it would be front and center on the plaza. We would likely have the power on a timer so that it's not illuminated drawing people after a certain hour at night, that it would turn off and then turn back on in the mornings. As for maintenance, the reason he's building this version is that it is a simplified version. So you don't have quite as many of those pieces going back and forth. Staff will have to go and reload boards periodically for the artworks so that there's more teed up. And, beyond that, it's hopefully should work. So, we've
how many
been
a
discussing
day
it.
do you think it could do, or we don't know? It's not like a...
Well, the initial load, he was estimating it would be an average of 6 a day or 5.5 a day. But then the additional quarters would pay for additional panels, which he would ship us from from his house, from his studio.
So would people know that like ahead of time? I mean, it's another thing like I'm thinking about just in the process.
There's not a limit to how many it can do a day.
But you just said six. Wait, so
So the way he's loading, the number of pieces he loads in the Art Forge, it would go for, I think it was a month and a half or something like that on one load if you're averaging 6 a day. But the piece, it will go as long as people feed quarters in it and then watch it go through. And then once it's finished, it's ready for the next person.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You don't have to reload after 6.
No, it was estimating it would be every 6 weeks that we would have to reload if it was
Oh,
6
you
a
just
day.
said 6. Wait. No. Okay, so 6. Wait, let me just. understand.
If you, what she meant is he's estimating that the thing, it would run for 6 weeks if you did 6 a day. So if the pace is 20 a day, you'd have to reload it more frequently.
More frequently.
Got it.
Okay, that's what I understand. Okay.
So
I
if-
just think that people, would want. I mean, personally, I would hate to put even though yes, it's an art and maybe giving back to it, but I feel like if you're going to go there and spend 4 quarters, it's kind of for some people it could be an investment that they don't want to just use it for that. They want to get something out of it. So that's my 2 cents. I want to be sensitive of people putting in money and not getting something of value that they're expecting to get.
People banging the candy machine.
It will have a tilt sensor on it. It does.
It's just something important to think about. That I think so. Yes, people think just because we live here that everybody has money, but for some people, 4 quarters, it's a big investment for something like this. I just think we have to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
Can I make the point? These are common. They're used in many places. They just.
If you need to speak into the microphone, if you're going to speak.
Can't you hear me?
No, it's recorded.
It's recorded for the television.
Oh. You want me to go upstairs?
I'd love to hear your comments.
As you know, I'm Jim's mother. These are very common. They have one at the Field Museum. They've worked there for many years, and they use them to make all kinds of different objects. The only thing he's using something that's been well used and works well. He's just putting it in a different body.
So we should have confidence.
That's it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion to approve the upcoming temporary works and the allocation of $15,000 for the Toby Fraley?
So moved.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are approved.
Very cool.
Busy agenda. Any announcements? We're confirmed on the 8th or the 9th when we're doing our retreat?
We're doing it on
the 8th.
Friday the 8th. And one thing we want to call your attention to is we finally have the printed versions of the Public Art Master Plan.
Wow.
Thank you.
They are a little pricey to print, so please guard them with your lives. But the reason we wanted to distribute them this evening was in the context of the retreat. So if the commissioners could please look back at it, and then in particular the chart toward the back showing our short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, because we're going to revisit those at the retreat and look at what we've accomplished, which is actually quite a lot, and may help direct the discussion of the priorities once we look at the budget and what we have pending and what we want to take on for the next year. So, so we ask that you all review that and familiarize with that, and maybe come with a couple of prepared suggestions for things you would like to see us take on in the next year.
Awesome. I'm going to make one more second for recruiting. So these positions for planning and transportation and historic resources and ARB are really important. So please put the word out to friends that you think, or just people you know in your neighborhoods that you think could be good candidates for these positions. All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That was a big agenda.